evening and welcome to the Madison DX Club's September program. My name is Kevin N9JKP, president of Madison DX Club. I'd like to introduce our past president, Bob, W9EWZ, who will introduce tonight's speaker. Take it away, Bob.
Well, thanks. It's a pleasure tonight to have one of our club members, actually, K9BY, Brett Johnson. Brett's also the president of the Greater Beloit Amateur Radio Club. So he's wearing a lot of hats. Brett's a software engineer and a developer. He's also, I think of him as the fixer for systems for a number of financial and healthcare institutions. So he knows a little bit about protecting computers. It's a pleasure to have Brett with us. He gave us a presentation quite a few years ago before we started Zoom and before we started recording the programs, and it was so well received that we thought it was time to have him back. So Brett, thanks so much for agreeing to do this. I know how busy you are. Please go ahead whenever you're ready.
All right. Thank you for that, Bob. Good evening, everyone. As Bob mentioned, I've got quite a bit of experience in the computer technology industry as well as amateur radio. I spent the last 20 years at a company called IBM supporting software for, again, very large financial institutions, insurance institutions, and very well trained in security. I also do my own private side business doing similar security for networks and that kind of thing. I was licensed in 2010, and I've been the president of the Beloit Amateur Radio Club now going, 5 years, I think, 6 years, something like that. So, but what I'm doing tonight is a presentation. It'll be somewhat similar to what I did pre-COVID for the Madison DX Club. I'll be sure to start this sharing. And tonight's presentation, are you guys seeing that or no?
Yes, we are.
Okay. So you're seeing the slide deck, correct? Okay, I'll close this then. All right. So this is a quick slide deck that I put together. Actually, AI put together for me. So thank you for that. On protecting your amateur radio station computer. Now, though this presentation is, kind of geared towards amateur radio, a lot of what I'm going to talk about today should be things that you guys do in your everyday life with your own personal computers, your own personal cell phones, equipment like that. I mean, these are just general best practices just to keep yourself, you're in the modern information age, keep your stuff protected. So this is not really specific to amateur radio for the most part, but it's what path we're going to go down here. So I just want to kind of let people know that, and this will probably be some information to repeat for those that were in the meeting 6 or 7 years ago. I'll probably be harp on the same thing, and you may even hear some of the same stories. So I'll apologize for that. The first thing is, basically security matters, again, not to ham radio, but also just on your general computer. I mean, if you think how much information that you store on your computer or your cell phone, you access your bank accounts, your credit cards, you've got, all your personal photos, all this information. And when it comes to amateur radio, the biggest piece of information that we have are our logs. I mean, that's the one that's, driving why we use computers in amateur radio to begin with. So all this information is extremely valuable. So we want to go ahead and keep that stuff protected. And the basis, the foundation, it all begins with security, specifically passwords. And I know we've talked about this in the past. I'm sure probably most people in this meeting, I'm going to guess, have used the same password on multiple systems. And in today's day and age, that is not a good idea whatsoever. All it takes is one of those systems to be compromised, and the attackers can get your email address, they can get your name, address, they can get your hashed passwords. Typically, they can get enough information to start a identity theft kind of process, and it doesn't take a whole lot. If you use your same credentials, so your same email and password across multiple sites, once one site's compromised, the rest are fair game for the attackers. So this is the primary reason that we should not use the same password across all this, or even multiple sites. I mean, you should really use a password manager. And this is something I brought up again 6 years ago, 7 years ago. Back then, my recommendation to the average person was to go out and use LastPass. They had a free service, and then it was a very reasonable $2 a month or something that get if you wanted their advanced version. Unfortunately, LastPass was sold, and within 6 months of them being sold and the new owners taking over, they had a security breach and leaked tens of thousands of users' databases, password databases. So, unfortunately, today I cannot recommend LastPass as a password provider. The one that I use for my employer, we use it for both work and they also offer it for personal, is called 1Password. 1Password, the number one password.com. It's a very nice tool to use. I can tell you from experience, my wife, who's not very tech savvy, was opposed to the whole concept of taking on a password database up front. But once I basically forced her into it and told her she couldn't manage the passwords anymore and have a little piece of paper and a file next to the file drawer next to her desk with all of our bank account information and credit cards and insurance, and I said no more. But now she loves it. Now once I got her trained on it, and now she doesn't know her passwords for most of the websites. When she goes to a website, it's the password manager jumps in, go ahead and just click on it, and she logs in. Doesn't even have to know it. We have our credit card information in there. We have, all kinds of information in there. So basically it makes all the stuff that you would normally carry around in your wallet or purse or whatever, stick it in the password manager, and you're going to be much better off. So the key again is with the password manager is it will remember all of your passwords, and it'll create secure passwords that are 24, 36 characters long. That's really what you want to be doing, and you want to let the password manager do that. And then you only have to remember one password, the password to your vault. Once you open your vault, all the other things kick in. Now, one thing that a lot of people do, I know, is use the password manager in their web browsers, whether you use Chrome or Firefox or Edge. That's really not a good idea. It's not as a secure way to do it. And also, it's really not cross-platform. With the password manager, it runs in Windows, runs in Mac, runs in Linux, runs on your iPhone or your Samsung phone, your tablets, everywhere. I know you can synchronize your passwords through Firefox or Chrome, but again, those are not as secure as a true password vault. So just keep that in mind. General practice is use a single password vault, have it replace all the password managers in your web browsers, and use those. I just want to also say the other one we have here is change your passwords regularly. This one, my employer makes me change them every 90 days. That's a little excessive in my opinion. But I will tell you, before I came down, actually, when I came down to my desk today just to jump on the meeting, I had an email from one of my service providers that they just literally today had a security breach. And they recommend go in and change all your passwords. So that's why I was a few minutes late getting into the meeting during the business portion, because I was busy going off and re-registering and changing those passwords. So that's something that you really need to take seriously. Because again, if that password gets out, it could be bad. Fortunately, this was one in a password database. It was unique. So I'm not really that worried, other than I just didn't want to lose control of the services that account, those passwords protected that account. So This also holds true for QRZ, Logbooks of the World, any of those websites. You guys, we all use these websites, and I know it's easy to use your call sign and your standard password, but that's really not a good idea. Because all it takes is one talented hacker to focus on QRZ or Logbook, and they could potentially get in there, get your data, and then go off and do other nasty things with it. Software protection on the ham station computer. So traditionally, we use paper logs. Then, we had logging programs. Nowadays, I'm sure everybody here is familiar with FT4, FT8, and some of those other digital modes. So these are, you're now going out on the internet, you're downloading additional programs onto your computer, and you're using DX spotting sites that go onto the internet. So all these things are going out to the internet, and you really need to make sure and watch what software you're using, what software you're installing, what websites you're going to, because that is probably the number one problem, is getting your computer hijacked, your web browser hijacked. They get access to your information, and that's not a good thing. The foundation of this would be antivirus, anti-malware. Here, you guys want to stick with, there are many products out there, Kaspersky, there's Norton, there's McAfee, there's AST, I think it was AVT, something like that. If you're a Windows user and you're using a modern Windows browser or Windows operating system, so Windows 10, Windows 11, even Windows 7 has Windows Defender or Microsoft Defender. That is actually a really good antivirus program that comes on the Windows machines. So my recommendation is, and what I do here in my own house is for the Windows machines, we just rely on the Windows Defender or Microsoft Defender. It's a very good antivirus. It's got a very high hit rate on finding these things. It doesn't cost you anything because it's already included in your Windows operating system, and it doesn't bog your system down like some of the other tools. Because I've used basically all of them over the course of the last 20 years, 30 years. They all do good, but honestly, I mean, they all tend to slow things down, and they try to bolt on all the stuff that you don't need. So really, if you're a Windows user, stick with the Windows Defender. I mean, that's my recommendation there. And again, my wife accidentally clicked on a spam mail a couple weeks ago, and sure enough, it triggered a whole bunch of stuff. And now she knew, as soon as she clicked it, she called me and said, I did this. Come take a look at my computer. Once I went through and looked at the logs, it actually did. The Windows Defender caught every instance of this virus trying to kick off and take over her machine, and it blocked it all out. So I can't speak, I'm not and people probably don't know me, but I'm not a Microsoft guy to begin with, but that one is actually probably one of the better tools you can use on your system. The firewall configuration, this one comes in. This is for the people who are doing remote operating. I know Flex Radio has a bunch of stuff. I know ICOM has their remote software. Generally, from a ham radio perspective, firewalls aren't going to be a big concern. If you're just doing your logging program, you're connecting to your local radio, through either serial or Ethernet, all of that stuff, the firewall isn't really an issue. But it's when you start going into the remote operating where you want to use ICOM's RBSA1 software, I think it is. And if you want to use that remotely, you have to go to your router and open up some ports. And what that effectively doing is open up the internet and giving them access directly to your computer on those particular ports. And that is where the firewall comes in, and where you really need to be focused on what traffic you're letting through from the internet directly to your PC. So I don't want to go too much into it because I don't know how many people here actually do remote control like that, but it's something to think about. If you are doing that, or they tell you, go to your router and open up, go to this screen and click this button and type these numbers in here and click save, you really got to ask yourself what you're doing there, because what you're doing again is opening up the router and letting internet traffic hit your computer directly with no filter. And this leads into our third one, which is if you're going to do that, make sure that your computer is up to date. And I can't stress this enough. If you use your computer and you connect to the internet, you need to make sure that you're applying all of the updates, whether they're Mac, whether they're Windows, whether they're Linux. It doesn't matter. You need to stay current on these, because the technology is progressing so fast that as soon as these vulnerabilities are discovered, the hackers are taking advantage of them right away. And keeping your computer updated is critical. And I know a lot of hams probably still have Windows XP or Windows, 98. I know some hams that still use Windows Server 2000. These things are 20, 25 years old. If you put those on the internet today, one, chances are they probably won't work because the security has come along so far. But two, they're wide open, and there's constantly bots and automated programs out there scanning every IP address on the internet, looking for every port open. They try to identify what your operating system is, what vulnerabilities you could potentially have, and they're going to try to take over your computer. And that's why keeping the system updates is critical. If you use Windows Server 2000 or 98, for your logging computer and it doesn't connect to the internet, it's not such a critical thing. It's only when you have devices that are connected to the internet, even through a router, even through at home, you want to make sure they're protected, they're updated, because I had, again, another example for my wife. A few years ago, she was getting postage she was trying to find the U.S. Post Office website or pay postage or something. She landed on some webpage. She sat there for a few minutes, got up, got a phone call, came back 10 minutes later, and her computer was all the browsers were locked up, and telling her that her computer was infected. And it was just sitting on a website. She didn't click anything. She didn't do anything. She was just sitting at a website, and the website was able to take control of her web browser. Fortunately, nothing happened. I went in, cleared it all out, and things were good. But it just goes to the point of if you're not staying current with all of the updates on your operating system and your web browsers, and you're surfing the internet, then you are exposing your computer to these things. And again, whether it's your logging computer, your home computer, your phone, I can't tell you how many people I see that just have that little update down there in their start bar and their button that basically says apply updates now, and they just keep ignoring it and ignoring it and ignoring it and ignoring it. And that really is not a good thing to do for any computer. Network security. This one, again, the network segregation is really going to apply to those hams that are using remote operating, whether you're remote operating on your side or you're connected to other remote operating. That's where you're going to want to, you'd potentially want to have a network a separate network completely, especially if you're trying to do you're doing like FT8 remotely, actually anything where you're piping the audio, both your speaker and your microphone over the network, plus all the data. You're probably doing waterfall. That can take up a lot of bandwidth, especially if it's wireless. You definitely want to be wired if you're doing this kind of stuff. Wireless, unless you're on the latest wireless Wi-Fi 6 stuff, which is just kind of hitting the market now. Streaming that kind of audio over a standard, Wi-Fi 4 system, you're going to get a lot of latency and a lot of drop packets. So that's why you'd want to separate out that if you're using the flex radios or anything like that, where everything goes over the network, you want to make sure that you'd have enough dedicated bandwidth from there not to impact anything else. Secure protocols is something that I live by. Even on my own private network here, all of my intercommunications between every system I make sure is done over SSL or HTTPS. All it takes is one hacker or one bad actor to get onto one system. You could even just be a Raspberry Pi or something, and they can sniff the traffic on your network and they can start getting passwords, user accounts, that kind of information if it's not encrypted. So again, this is not specific to amateur radio. This is in general. Anywhere you go, don't assume anything's safe, even on your own network, because things happen. The monitoring is a little bit more tricky for home users and amateur operators. The software I use for my home network is called from a company called Ubiquity, and it's called Unify. This runs all of my network switches. It runs all of my network access points, my Wi-Fi hotspots, or my Wi-Fi access points. And it all gives me a nice little web interface where I can actually track all my inbound traffic and all my outbound traffic on my network. This is a great tool. The one that they have for the home router is called a Dream Machine. And then you buy the access points separately. So the Dream Machine is your router that plugs into the internet and gives you all the information on your hardwired network. And then you buy separately the Wi-Fi access points and place them throughout the house or wherever to give you this. But it's a very nice package, and it's very easy to monitor and see when your network is being attacked. And you can kind of, have it, it'll actually mitigate most of it itself. Now that sounds a little odd, your network being hacked. I host my own services here, and I read the logs on my own IP address on the daily basis. And I can't tell you how many, probably over 1,000 attacks a day I see hit my home IP address. And they're just random bots trying to find, they're probing, they're looking for something that they can take advantage of. Any device that connects to the internet is subject to this. Your home router is your firewall. It's your block between, the rest of the nasty world and your home little environment. And again, if you're not doing port forwarding, a lot of this stuff doesn't really matter. It's once you start opening up those ports on that router and pointing them to your computer inside so that people from the outside can get in, that's when you really need to start monitoring this closely and making sure that you're protected and that you know what stuff is hitting your computer. So we're at time, we're good. This one's a big one, data backup. Again, this goes back specifically to you guys, to the ham operators. What's our biggest important data is our logs. So we want to make sure that we keep those logs secure. And this basically says you want to have 3 copies in 2 different types and at least 1 offsite. Now, obviously, the first copy is the log that you use every day. So that's your first original version of that file. A lot of people nowadays use either Microsoft's OneDrive or Google Drive, or Apple has their own drive that when you're using your devices, it will not only keep a copy of the file on your computer, but it will also make a copy of that file and upload it to the cloud so that you can access it from multiple devices. And that qualifies as your second copy as well as your offsite copy. So I do recommend using, if you do use, have access to OneDrive or Google Drive or any of those, it's definitely a good idea to use that and know where your log files are on your computer and make sure that they are covered by your OneDrive replication to your remote site. The third version usually is some form of external hard drive, whether it's a thumb drive or a physical USB hard drive. You probably want to keep a copy of your logs there and all your other information. So all your documents, all of your photos, you do want to keep them on a separate drive that's not always attached to your computer. And that's key, because one of the reasons that you're trying to back this stuff up is, again, if your computer gets compromised, there's the ransomware attacks where they come in and they basically lock down all of your data and your My Documents and any data that they can find that they think is valuable, they'll lock it down and then you got to pay to get it unlocked. And if your backup drive is connected to your primary computer all the time, well, guess what? They're gonna lock down not only the primary drive, but your backup drive as well. So if you're using the third drive, which is your external hard drive, that's one that you want to plug in, do your backups, and then pull it out and keep it disconnected from the computer. Because that way, if your computer does get compromised, you do end up in a ransomware attack, you can always just buy a new computer, plug in your external hard drive, and restore all your data. And I do know, I mean, I've had one, it was, again, I think probably right around the time that I did the last presentation for the Madison DX Club. I was up in Minnesota at a family gathering, and one of the people there was a teacher and said that her home computer got compromised and they wanted $1,500 to unlock all her documents and her photos. You know, and unfortunately there was nothing we can do. I mean, at this point in time, there's nothing we can do. You know, once that data is encrypted with high level encryption, unless you have the pass key, their brute force trying to break that is not going to happen with the current technology that we have today. But you also want to make sure you know where your log files are stored. And you know, N3FJP, I know they're under. He puts them under your documents, and then Affirm Tech, and so forth. If you don't know where your logs are stored today, you certainly want to take some time and investigate that and make sure you are backing them up, because they can get corrupted. You know, or you could have a hard drive crash and lose them completely. So you want to make sure that you know where they're at before something like that happens. And you want to, again, make sure that you're backing them up on a regular basis. Actually, and then we'll see where we're here next. The physical security measures, this is okay. You know, a lot of times keep your computer in a secure location. One thing that I can say, or one of the biggest recommendations I make, is make sure you keep your computer off the floor. I know a lot of people who have those little tower cases, they put them on the floor next to them. The problem with that is dust bunnies. They're everywhere. When they're on the floor, they're more likely to get sucked up into the computer case, block your cooling vents, and eventually lead to the computer overheating. So that's one thing that I always tell people: when you when you put the computer, you want to make sure I always put it on a solid desk up off the floor, to make sure that you're not sucking in as much dust and dirt and debris into that computer. I know that's kind of different than the physical security location here, but that was when I was going through this point, that was more important. I don't think we generally don't have problems with people stealing computers around, at least around this area.
What?
So I don't think we generally have people, you know, we're more rural, I think, countryside people. So I don't think people breaking into houses and stealing computers is an issue. You know, if you're probably live in more of a city, urban area, you may want to make sure that that's more hidden, so people can't necessarily see it looking through the windows. Device protection, and this is not only for laptops, but this, like, field day is an interesting one, because if you operate 24-hour field days like our club does, that's one of the concerns. Is if you're in a public space, leaving all your computers and radio equipment outdoors can be a challenge. You pretty much need somebody there to monitor them all the time. So, and of course, the last one is data sanitation, which is never get rid of your computers without wiping the data off of them. Don't get rid of your cell phones or your tablets without doing factory resets. Because that's a big business, is taking recycled computers and trying to extract as much information off the hard drives as people can get. So I've gone as far as to buy a little device that I can plug hard drives into. You hit a button, it does basically a DoD, Department of Defense, erase on the hard drives. Depending on the size of the hard drive, it takes anywhere from 4 hours to 2 days to wipe a hard drive. And then I could go, then I'm okay turning around and recycling the hard drives. And I'm talking just the physical hard drive, not the whole computer. The whole computer you should be recycled, but the actual hard drive is what you want to wipe and clear. Um, there are several programs out there you can get free and paid that will allow you to also wipe hard drives. And I want to talk about free software. And I know this is probably, I wanted to do this a little earlier and I just didn't put a note in there for that one. This kind of goes back to let's jump back here real quick. I was going to talk about it, I think here. Okay. So software protection. One of the things I wanted to talk about here was downloading software, because that's obviously critical to what we do. I mean, if you're going to use N3FJP, you have to download it. If you're going to use, WSJT, just for the FT4, FT8, that's another program you have to download. There's hundreds, if not thousands, of ham radio programs out there. A word of caution is you want to really make sure that you're downloading the software from a reputable site, a reputable location, the actual manufacturer, or who the developer who's publishing it, like the WSJT software. There are a lot of fakes out there that will take a legitimate software, they will then repackage the installer and put some Trojan or virus in there, and then they'll try to fake out Google or Yahoo, and so if you were to just do search FT8 software on Yahoo, you might get a link that looks legitimate but really has a modified version of the program that's going to add an additional payload. The original program will be there, it'll work, but they're going to put something additional on your computer. And that's something that, it's hard to say. How do you know if you're getting it from the right source or not? You just really have to be vigilant. You have to basically, a lot of times what I'll do, if I'm unsure, I'll go to 2 or 3 different search engines. I'll put in similar search, and if they all point back to the same thing, then I'm more comfortable using that link, as opposed to if I had go to 3 different search engines and I get 3 different answers on where to download the software, it becomes a little bit more challenging to say, okay, which one's the right one. The other one I want to caution about is, and this is one that I just heard about recently. One of the major security breaches not too long ago came from it was an inside developer for the company who wanted to play with AI photo generation or whatever, and he went and found some plugin and downloaded it and put it on his work computer, and it plug in for, I think it was Adobe Photoshop, to integrate the AI engine, and it in fact was a virus that basically took over his computer, and they ended up leaking. Eventually, it was probably, I think, 10,000 user accounts that got leaked on that vulnerability. And when they traced it back to the source, it was this guy downloading something from a website called GitHub, which is, if you're a developer of any kind, GitHub is kind of where the world shares their source code. So somebody put up some source code that actually had a virus in it. He didn't know that. He just downloaded it, installed it, and things went sideways pretty quick. So talking about the essentials of software protection, you really need to make sure, if you're getting something for free, that it's not going to be something that has unintended effects. Less so with stuff like N3FJP, where he wants you to pay for it. Those are a little bit more reputable. But again, just be careful when you're downloading software, because that can be a problem. Of course, then always there's the RF issues that we have. So station grounding, properly shielding your cables around the station, and ferrite protection. The big one here, though, is when it comes to your computer, is making sure that you don't get the RF into your computer, because that will wreak havoc on it. But you'll pretty much know right away if that happens. Strange things will start happening to your computer, and it'll just freeze. It'll lock up. Honestly, the number one thing that I found over the years is the USB cable going between. So not even serial cables are generally okay. It's the USB cables that tend to give the most problem between a radio like the ICOM, the 7300 and the PC. If you're getting weird things when you're operating FT4 or FT8, usually on the low bands, um, putting ferrite protection around those USB cables, getting a really good quality USB cable, and then putting the ferrite beads on either end of it will do wonders for resolving strange audio and rig control anomalies between the station and the computer. We're just about done here, I think. If you slide, continuous awareness, and again, this is just being, paying attention to everything, staying, current. As an example, like I said right before this call, I had one of my websites was compromised. So, if you, probably most of us, I'm guessing, may have at one point or another had, some company. I think you have a data breach, and then they offer free credit monitoring for a year or 2 years or whatever. That kind of stuff is important from a day-to-day standpoint. From the amateur radio, more just paying attention to what's going on in the software world for the components that you're using. But again, this talk is more on usually on a higher level of in general day to day. If you see or hear about different websites being compromised, you want to basically pay attention to any of the viruses going around. There haven't been many lately, and I think go back to Code Red and a few there. There was the Heartbleed. There were a few major incidents over my career that basically um, put millions of computers at risk. So you do want to kind of pay attention to those. Again, I haven't heard any recently, but just paying attention to what's going on, staying involved in the forums of the software you use and the communities. And that kind of wraps up the presentation that I have. Um, so we do have some time left, I believe. So I could, if we want to open it up and do some Q&A, I'm happy to answer questions,
Yes,
elaborate on anything.
yes, Brad. We had a couple questions come in writing while you were talking.
Okay.
And one was about pass keys. Um, that came during your discussion on the onepassword.com. So
Okay.
passkeys is a different process for securing your um, computer software.
Yes. So passkeys. So just one interesting little tidbit, from my standpoint. Again, I started out. I told you I work for IBM. I've been with them for over 20, or this will be my 20th year coming up in November. Um, they as a corporation, so we've got 300,000 employees worldwide, and they've actually they're sunsetting passwords altogether. We're not going to be able to log on to an IBM system using a password again. We have to use passkeys. Now, passkeys come in several forms. Um, and I will admit I've been using the one password passkey now for the last 3 months within IBM, and it's made my life so much easier. But I also do have the UB keys, which are hardware-based pass keys. And I've been using those for about a year and a half now. And both of them are great. I anytime that you can use a pass key, I strongly recommend it. Now the pass keys are different than the two-factor authentication. So the two-factor authentication you're kind of familiar with when you go to sign into a website and they may email you a code or they'll text you a code, or you might have a small little a key that displays 6 digits and rolls over every 60 seconds. Those are two-factor authentication. I also recommend, in addition to using the passkey, to also using those. So all of my stuff I use is um, either two-factor authentication, um, or Well, they use a two-factor authentication, and the ones that support passkeys and the ones that do passkeys nowadays are more the financial institutions, your bank, your credit cards. Those are the ones that are going to be adopting the passkeys first. Um, but if they don't, then you can stick with the normal username and password on that. Um, One thing I would recommend is again, I use both the hardware. I use the YubiKey as both a two-factor and a passkey. So I will admit to that. So I do that, but I generally try to separate mine out. So I run my password manager on my PC for the most part. I run my what else? Give me a second here. I'm just gonna look this. I can't remember what it's called. Authy. So for the two-factor authentication, I use an app called Authy, Authy. It's equivalent to Google's password manager or their I can't call it right. Google has their password. Hold on, give me a second here. I got to pull up a window. I'm just drawing a blank.
Oh, authenticator.
Yeah, the
Am I right?
authenticator. Thank you. Yep. So the Google Authenticator. Now, the problem that we've had with the Google Authenticator is you can't move it from one device to another. So if you get a new so if you put the Google Authenticator on your cell phone and you go through and take the time, I think I've got probably close to 60 different websites in my Authy application, and I get a new cell phone every 3 years or so. I have to go through and basically deactivate the Google Authenticator off the old phone for all 60 websites, and then go reactivate them on the new phone for all 60 websites, and that can be quite daunting. Authy has a unique system where I can basically activate two devices at once. So I can have my old phone working, I can get my new phone, install Authy. On my old phone, I can authorize it, and then I can pull it up on my new phone so I have access to all 60 or whatever accounts. And then I can, on my new phone, deauthorize my old phone, and then it's no longer valid. So it makes moving phones a lot easier than Google Authenticator. So that's my preferred tool to use as far as the two-factor authentication. And like I said, I use a combination of the 1Password and the YubiKeys for my pass keys as well.
Another question we had was for backups, do you recommend cloning, having a clone of the hard drive as well, or as an alternative?
Okay, so cloning is an interesting one. So it depends on the scenario, but um, my servers, so I run the hypervisor. So basically, my servers I run, I actually do clone those, but it's more a snapshot. But your home computer, the problem with cloning it is typically you don't want to clone an active hard drive. So if you're running Windows or Mac and you try to take a clone of that hard drive, chances are it's not, it can get corrupted because the point that when the clone starts to the time that it finishes, you can, if the data changes, you could end up in a weird state. So the only way that I would suggest cloning a hard drive is if you actually were to power the system off, boot it up off of a separate operating system, a CD, DVD, jump drive, and then clone it that way. So if I'm going and replacing somebody's computer where their hard drive is 5 years old and I say it's time to replace it, I'll clone the hard drive from one to the other, put the new hard drive in the system, and then send them on their way. But I wouldn't do that on a live active system. I would stick with if you're a Windows user, I would stick with the Microsoft backup. I'm sure Apple has something similar as far as their backups go.
I just tried to recently. I tried to clone some drives, and whichever program I was using, I've got it here someplace. But it just said, you're not going to do it. I had to take the drives out of the machine and go to another machine to clone them.
Oh no, I can send you some information on how to do that without having to go through. You still, so basically, bottom line, you'd still have to boot up. You still need to create a bootable media. So you need to have an operating system on either a USB key or a DVD ROM, like a live CD or something like that you can boot up off of that external device, and then you can copy from one hard drive to the other. You don't have to pull them out of the computer. If they're both in the computer, you copy from one to the other. The other one that I do is, I'm sure you probably did, is you can go on Amazon and buy a little USB to hard drive adapter. So basically, it's got a USB on the one end, and it's got either the SATA or the IDE connector on the other end. You plug your hard drive in, plug it into the computer, and it shows up as an as another hard drive on your computer. As long as you have that, you can. The software that I use to actually, well, I do it manually. So the software I use is called System Rescue CD. So now that's a Linux operating system, and the command that I run, it's very simple. You have to do it right, because if you do it wrong, you could actually write the empty hard drive to the new hard drive to the old hard drive, which wouldn't do you any good. But the command that I use is called DD, and it's just a raw disk copy, sector for sector, from one hard drive to the other. There are some other software out there that will do it more automated. But usually what I'm doing is I go for the fastest way possible. So that's why I use the DD command.
I was using Macram Reflect.
Okay, I'm not familiar with that one.
Well, it just worked beautifully in the past, and all of a sudden the latest versions were
Okay.
not going to do what you were doing. I was
Yeah,
also very interested in the fact that you said that you were using Ubiquiti. I have 3 locations, and I have Ubiquiti systems all tied together with a VPN between the 3 locations. And I am very, very pleased with the way it works. But it was a learning curve after coming from Netgear. It was a learning curve to get up to speed on them.
Yes, I've been using Ubiquiti now for close to 20 years. So I can't speak well enough for them. I mean, and I had one. The first time I used Ubiquiti, I was setting up an outdoor setup from a building to shooting about I was about 3/4 of a mile to another building, and I put 2 antennas of the original Ubiquiti antennas outdoors, and they lasted for 8 years before the company actually sold. So I was surprised that, when I put them up, I told the company, I said, I'll give you 5 years before these things fail and we'll have to replace them. And it was 8 years when they were sold, and they said, nope, they're still working perfectly. So you can't go wrong with that.
I'd like to make one other comment, just reinforcing what you said. I had already made a note of it, but then you covered it anyhow. But when you bring something up and you're going to download software, take a look at where in the hell it's coming from, and make sure that you're not getting rerouted to another location that doesn't make sense. And another thing, if you look at pop-ups that keep coming up, that they tend to be loaded in there. I found one the other day, and I took a really good close look at it, and it was almost completely washed out. But at the very bottom, you could see who was behind it. And I went over and looked, and sure enough, I found the app and got rid of it. But I mean, these people are just getting ruthless in what they do.
Oh, it's amazing. I mean, the one that I actually saw was, now this is not quite what you're talking about there, but my wife got an email, and she, whenever she's a suspect of something, she has me look at this one. I actually graded this thing. I gave him a B+. I mean, this email was so well constructed that there was only one little fault in the email that gave away that it would have been it was a DocuSign kind of thing. So they wanted to, click here to sign this document, and it was so well done that there was the only thing was that one link that led to me that said, nope, this isn't right. And sure enough, after I told them that, that particular customer reached out to them like a day later and said, yeah, our email was just hacked. And if you got any email from us, don't click on anything. And, fortunately we caught it before it got that far. But yeah, they're becoming very, very, all attacks are becoming very, very targeted. The other one that I've seen, and this is something new that I've just started observing, is a similar. And again, these are email attacks. So email is a big platform to launch attacks on, but it's their GPS fleet control. So they got a fleet of trucks that are all GPS based or have GPS systems in them, and they've been getting, probably once a week, they get an email saying, we've noticed some unusual activity on your account. Please click here to sign in. And it's Fleetmatics. Everything looks great. But when I do a backtrace to the domain that the link points to, that domain is usually set up within the last 12 hours. So these guys are registering domain names, setting up these very targeted, specific, with the person's name and the account number and everything. I mean, it looks so authentic. But the actual link where they're sending to you is a domain that doesn't match up with everything else. And those domains I've seen 4 of them now, where within 12 hours of receiving, the 12 hours of receiving the email, the domain had just been created. So there's a lot of uncertainty, and a lot of bad actors out there really trying to get a hold of your information one way or the other.
You can also check email headers.
Yeah, absolutely. I just literally, I just taught my wife the last week how to read email headers because she got sick of asking me every time she got one. So she's like, "Well, how do I find them in Outlook? And what am I looking for?" So, but yeah, that's another good one. I mean, it's always the other one I was going to mention too is there was this one that was legitimate, but most of the times if you come across a download link and it's pointed to Google Drive, it's not legitimate. It's going to be spam. Except there was this one vendor. I bought this one. I think it was a serial adapter, and this goes back to the story I said a little bit earlier, where the first download link I came and said pointed me to Google Drive, and I'm like, okay, that's not real. So I went to a different search engine, did the same search, came back to the same link to Google Drive. I went into a third search engine, did a similar search, came back, got the information, said, okay, I got 3 different search engines all pointing back to the same file. I said, it's got to be real. So I ended up taking the risk. I downloaded it. I scanned it, of course, before opening it, and all was good. So, but generally, yeah, if you see a download link to Google Drive, run away. It's not legitimate.
Brett, when you talked with our club years back, you talked about browsers, and the one that you were recommending at that time was DuckDuck, which I still use on my phone. And I'm wondering if you have any thoughts of, have all the browsers kind of equalized with respect to security, and the nice thing, they all say they don't track you, but I look at bunny rabbits, and the next day Amazon is saying, "Do you want some rabbit stew?" So what are your thoughts on search engines?
Okay, well, yeah. So search engines and browsers are kind of 2 separate topics.
Yeah,
So
I realize that what they
yeah,
said.
that's fine. So but the DuckDuckGo is still my go-to, search engine. That's the one that's you're not going to get all that spam. They're not following you. So DuckDuckGo is definitely on the top list. That's basically the way my work. Okay, so let's leave it away. So DuckDuckGo is the first one. Google, I mean, if you're looking for something, you need it, Google's the way to go. But again, they're collecting your information while you're doing it. So I very rarely use Google unless I really, if I'm having a real hard time with DuckDuckGo, then I'll resort to Google. The one that I still, back then when we made the presentation, and I still today stay away from Yahoo. I guarantee you go to Yahoo, you put a search criteria that the first 5 hits are going to all be garbage. They're all going to be, spam, malware trying to get you. So, search engines, DuckDuckGo number 1, Google 2. I've never been a big fan of any of the Microsoft search engines, but I would use those before I'd use Yahoo. The browsers go, back then I was, touting Firefox for a privacy controlled browser. Firefox has done a bit of a shift. They're a company like any other company, and they need money, and they're realizing, hey, for us to make money, we got to sell information. So they've kind of rewritten their license agreement. It says they can now start selling your information. So that's basically turned a lot of people off from Firefox. The one, let me see what it's called though. I think it's a Wolf browser. Hold on. Does anybody know what's off the top, man? LibreWolf, LibreWolf. LibreWolf is kind of it's a spin-off of so Firefox. So it's basically the similar Firefox engine, but it's not done by Mozilla. And so this is kind of the new leader for a privacy browser. So if you don't want people tracking your cookies and all that stuff, LibreWolf is the replacement now to Firefox. I have started shifting over to that. However, the one piece that I've, as I talked about earlier, is 1Password. The 1Password integration I can't get working with LibreWolf. It works on Firefox, but I can't get it there. So dragging my feet a little bit on moving over there. When it comes to my work browser, I use Google Chrome because everything runs in Google Chrome. And if my company doesn't care that they're sharing all this information with Google, then I don't either. So, so my work browser, my Google browser, is actually defaults to Google browser and the Google search engine and all of that, and that's just because it's work. So, but I'm very methodical that I do keep all my personal stuff, any personal browsing that I do in the Firefox or LibreWolf, and then all my work stuff I do in Chrome.
Question.
Yes.
Question. What do you think of Major Geeks?
That one I'm not familiar with.
Major Geeks
Oh, Major Geeks. Oh, okay. Yeah.
as a source of software.
I've used them a few times. I don't come across a need to go to them very often. I could recall 3 or 4 things I've downloaded over time. So I don't have really a negative or a positive on that one. It'd be kind of net neutral for me.
Good enough. Thank you.
Brad, another question. As Windows 10 goes away next month officially, and people have the right to, if they pay for it, I guess, get a year of extra security. What are your thoughts on Windows 10 to 11? And even though, as you said, there's probably people running Windows 95 out there somewhere.
This is an interesting topic. Here's the problem, because unless your computer is fairly modern, it's probably missing the TPM2 chip. And basically what that means is Windows 11 requires that this is a security chip. It's a little, like, think of it as a USB drive where they can store your security keys on the motherboard separate from your hard drive. So it's an external security mechanism. And Windows 11 is requiring that your motherboard has this TPM2 chipset on there. If your Windows 10 machine does not have this, you don't even have the option to go to Windows 11. You're pretty much,
There is a workaround.
yes, there are workarounds.
Because I have older machines and I've used the workarounds and they work beautiful.
Yeah, the big one is the Linux community is really jumping on board on this and basically pushing to say, hey, you could take your Windows 10 machine, you can put on Ubuntu or Mint
Right.
or any one of these distributions, and we'll keep you current. We'll make sure you're safe. You're with the latest security models and so forth. So
I've been using Linux since it came out. I've had Linus Torvalds at my home back in '98 or '89. I'm sorry.
I actually started on Minix. So if that
Huh?
tells you how I started on Minix.
Linux, okay.
So which was pre Linus Torvalds and
Right.
yeah.
But I've had him over for the show that they went against Microsoft. So I've been using it since, and that's why I also have the penguin on me.
Oh, very, very nice. Yeah, so Windows 11 is nice. I mean, I did run Windows 11 as a desktop for about 18 months. Just because, again, people ask me questions, so I need to be able to have some form of answer. But I got so fed up with them every 6 months wiping out your entire profile. So all the time you go through and turn all these security things off and say, no, I don't want you to do all this. Then 6 months later, they go, oh, yeah, you do want. We want to turn this all back on for you. So I've actually gone 100% over to Linux now. So my primary desktop, all my servers, my laptop, everything's Linux. The only Windows machine I have left in my house is my wife's computer, and that's because I'm not going to fight that battle. So,
question: What do you think of the Tor browser?
The Tor browser is good. I do like the Tor browser. It is a little bit slow. It's, again, it's a variation of Firefox with the SOX proxy built into it. So I did play with that. I'm more a fan of VPNs. So I've got private internet access. PIA is the one that I use. They're fairly reasonable. I usually buy 3 years at a time, I think it is. And they allow for unlimited connections. So you can have it on your phone, you can have it on your desktop, you can have it, I've got several different things. So that there are some people that argue that VPNs aren't as secure as people want you to believe. But anytime that you're taking and aggregating hundreds of users of traffic and feeding them out a single endpoint, it's really going to be hard to discern where that traffic's coming from. So I tend to use the VPN more than I would use Tor, but there's nothing wrong with Tor at all. It's other than it's just slow.
What about Chromium?
Chromium I like. So Chromium is, again, from a Linux standpoint, I'm all over Chromium as a browser. So in fact,
question,
yeah, go ahead.
how about Brave for Windows? And if you have any comment for us Mac users also about Safari or any other recommendations.
Yeah, the Mac users, I don't have a whole lot of experience. And that's kind of, I hate to say it, but it's by choice. I've never agreed with their whole business model to begin with. So I don't have a whole lot to offer there other than, the browsers that usually run. The problem with Mac is they pretty much, Apple controls who can install what on those systems, and I don't know how much variation there would be between the different browsers, because they're controlling it all. They decide who comes into their ecosystem and who doesn't.
Okay, thank you. And also, how about Brave for Windows?
Brave for Windows. I'm not familiar with Brave. Is that the browser?
Yes.
Yeah. I have not looked at that one yet. I can't. Oh, actually, no. I have seen this one. Okay, yeah, I did look at that one. So I did play with this one for about a week. And I don't really have one way or the other on that. I don't have a deep understanding of it. So.
Okay, thank you.
Any comments about AnyDesk and TeamViewer and these other programs that you network with or remote with for RIS?
TeamViewer. So yeah, TeamViewer. I was a big proponent of TeamViewer for many years until they they turned around and they doubled their prices in 2 years. So it got too expensive for me to do TeamViewer, but they're fairly secure. I'm not aware of any vulnerabilities or any compromises that they've had. So I would say TeamViewer is a good one. AnyDesk I did like. The one that I use right now is called Splashtop, SPLASHTOP. And then the one that my manager just turned me on to that he's been using, if you give me a minute here, it's Zoho, I think. Yeah, Zoho, ZOHO, is another good one that he said has been working very well for him as well. So all of those are good. Again, with those, what I do me personally, when I deploy them, I make sure that they require a password to connect. And then I also make sure that when I disconnect, I lock the machine, which irritates some of the people when I jump on their machines and then jump off and they have to log back on again. But that's just a little protection measure that I do, so that if somebody does get compromised, if somehow a connection does get compromised, they end up on a locked computer and they can't do anything, hopefully. But I'm not aware of any security breaches across all the major remote desktops. And again, my only gripe with TeamViewer was that they doubled their prices and for no good reason, other than they wanted more money.
I have a question about, I currently have, for my home network, I have 4 different Apple Airport Expresses as a router and wireless access points. I'm looking to replace that at some point. I know you mentioned the Unified Dream router, but that's only Wi-Fi 5 according to the website, just like my Airport Expresses. So I was wondering what recommendation you might have on replacing a whole house system.
Well, the nice thing with the Unify equipment is yeah, the Dream Machine may only be Wi-Fi 5, but then you can also buy Unify access points that are Wi-Fi 6. So if you already have multiple Wi-Fi, in your house and you're looking to replace those access points with Wi-Fi 6, that's actually what I'm going to do next. I've got two in my house right now that are still Wi-Fi 5, and I am getting ready to upgrade those to Wi-Fi 6, and I just have to swap out the antennas. My primary Unify controller stays the same. The other thing I like about them is the mesh network. So you could actually mesh your access points. So if you had multiple access points, you only need to plug, one needs to connect to your physical Dream box, your router, and the other three could be meshed in, and you just need to provide power for them. You don't necessarily have to drop cables to all those locations. So that would be my recommendation: would stick with a Dream Machine and then just get some Wi-Fi 6 Unify access points.
Okay, and probably going to have Wi-Fi 7 out pretty soon, I assume.
I don't think Wi-Fi 6 has been fully approved yet, so I would imagine, because it usually takes a few years for them to fully approve and adopt the technology. So I wouldn't necessarily be worried about Wi-Fi 7 right away.
Okay, that sounds good. Well, yeah, I currently everything in my house is hardwired now, so don't really need the mesh. I would just need to unplug and plug in the new access points then.
Right. And if you don't want to, and the nice thing with the Unify software is you can sit there and you can say, okay, this access point is only 6 gigahertz, and this one is only 5 gigahertz, and this one is only, so I mean, you could go through access point by access point and fine tune them for your environment, or you could have them all work in concert. They have the handoff, so it'll actually, you could tell it that if the signal strength drops below 25% for an access point, it'll actually encourage the device to roam and see if there's a better access point for closer one that's got a higher signal. So there's a lot of features in the Unify software that I'm just giving it a very high level thing, but if you really dig into it, if you're a techie geek guy, getting in there's a lot you can do with it.
Okay, well, thank you. Yeah, I just liked my Apple Airport because they were simple, but of course they're not getting security updates anymore. So anyway,
Right.
thank you for your help.
You're welcome.
Is Unify only applicable with Ubiquiti equipment?
Yes.
Thank you.
And it's not all Ubiquiti. You have to make sure because Ubiquiti also sells non-Unify stuff. So just if you find something that's a Ubiquiti, that doesn't mean it will be Unify. You have to make sure it actually has Unify in the name.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions for Brett? Let me do a plus one on Unify. I have the Cloud Gateway Max, and I think I have 3 or 4 different access points of different generations, and they all work very well, very seamlessly, and so forth. But one last question maybe, is if you have a Wi-Fi network, do you put or would you recommend putting the amateur radio stuff that would be accessing it in a separate subnet, or does that really matter?
Again, it will. So a couple things that I'll touch on this one. So one kind of to tout on the Unify access stuff, the Unify stuff. One of the things I like about it is you can actually set up 4 separate Wi-Fi networks on your Unify devices. So I actually have a primary LAN which connects to my primary one. I've got one that's for video, which is where all my Amazon Echo or your video streaming devices go on. I've got another one that is my guest network, which is an open network that has a rolling password that only is good for 24 hours. So when people come and visit, I can just give them that one, and that gives them access to the internet, but nothing in my network. And then I've got one other one, which is IoT for like my thermostat and all those random just little things that plug into your network. So that's another thing. So you don't have to have just one Wi-Fi. You can actually have multiple Wi-Fis. And to answer your question, that's where you can separate them out. So depending on which Wi-Fi network you attach to, I route you to the appropriate subnet, the IP subnet. So in that case, you might want to set up your Unify to have a ham Wi-Fi access point, and then that would just be all of your ham radio your ham radio equipment could assign onto that one. The main reason that you do this is for traffic control, is for basically broadcast traffic. You don't want to have all of your streaming video and your amateur radio stuff and your web browser and your kids playing, their PS5 or whatever, all on one Wi-Fi network, because you're gonna kill it. So, but if you separate them out so that your video, like I did, my video traffic's on one Wi-Fi, my computers are on another one, my random devices are on another one, so they're all segmented. So it controls traffic, and it also, if any of those IoT devices get compromised, they cannot talk to each other. I've got that Wi-Fi access that you cannot go device to device. So if you plug something into my IoT network, you have access to the internet, and that's it. Nothing else, no other device on that network can you see. Whereas if you go to the video network, obviously all those video network devices should talk to each other because they can share video between them. So these are all things you can configure in the Unify software, which gives you a lot more control. But that's kind of, I guess, I hope that sort of answers that question.
It does. Let me close. We have one more question, and we'll use this as our last one.
Fell asleep.
And I'll give my I don't want to call it a snarky answer, but how do you know what is enough protection and just being paranoid? It's kind of like, how do you know that you're too thin, too rich, or have enough protection? So
exactly. I mean, honestly, in my opinion, you can't have too much protection. One of the things I was thinking about, when I was kind of going through in my head all the things I wanted to tuck on, one of the things is like, how do you know that the information in your computer is secure? And the one story I heard was the only way that you can guarantee the information in your computer secure is if you take your computer and encase it in concrete, and then encase that in steel, and then drop it at the bottom of the Mariana Trench, so nobody can get to it. Then it's secure. But other than that, you're not secure. Just because you have a lock on the front door of your house, does that mean somebody's not going to break into your house? Just because you have a lock on your car, if somebody wants the information, they're going to find a way to get it. And part of what I spend my day doing is watching what these people are doing, how they're doing it, and trying to make sure that I can stay one step ahead of them. This was another one I wanted to talk about is I host my own mail server. And I just recently redid the whole, I containerized it. So I put everything in Docker containers and built all this out so it's secure. And one of the things I introduced was a step between the inbound SMTP or IMAP requests and the backend security system. So I've got actually a security proxy is basically what I built. And I was messing around with it. And then when I came to the part where I was writing the code to do the logging, I decided that when the request comes in, if it fails authentication, I'm going to write in clear text the user ID and the password to a log. And then I sit there and I literally, I'll just sit and pull it up on my screen and I'll just watch all these hackers trying to hack into my mail server. And what really caught my eye one day was I saw my email address and I saw a password that I used to use 20 years ago. And back then the password contained uppercase letters, lowercase letters, numbers, and symbols. So this is 20 years ago, I was using secure passwords for the time. Granted, it was only 10 characters, and I saw what they were doing was they were actually starting with the last part of my password was _2. And then I saw that, and then I saw _3, and then _4, and then _5. Every minute I would see another request come in. So I'm seeing my username and password. So there's somebody that knows it's my system, my username, and one of my passwords that I had from 20 years ago. And they're just trying to go through and iterate through one at a time, looking for trying to hack my system. So anybody who, this was one of the points I wanted to bring up too, is anybody who does, changes, they have to change their password every 90 days and they thought they're being clever going, well, I'll just add a 2 and a 3 and a 4 to the end of it. You're not clever. They're out there, they're doing it. So I sit and I watch how the hackers are trying to break into my system on a regular basis. And then I'm constantly trying to stay one step ahead and saying, how can I prevent them from getting through? So
Brett, you're not being paranoid because they really are out to get you.
they are out to get me. I have proof, and I could pull up a log here in 5 minutes and show you they're out to get me.
Well, this has been a really enjoyable discussion, scary at times, but very thought-provoking. And it's something, like you said, it's not only amateur radio, it goes to a big part of everyone's life, how we access information, keep in contact with friends and family, how we keep our treasures of pictures and all kinds of stuff. So this is all really good stuff. We'll have this video, we'll edit it, the beginning just to make certain it starts right, up on our website shortly. And so for any members who weren't able to make tonight's presentation or who want to listen to it again, it'll be available. So thank you, Brett. Bob, any final comments?
You're on mute, Bob. You're still on mute.
There we go. Well, thank you so much, Brett. I know Brett's a very, very busy man, as you might have gathered from his conversation here. And so we really, really appreciate you taking the time to give us this tutorial, Brett. Thanks so much. Take care.
All right, you're welcome. Thank you guys for listening.